All right, all right. Good morning, hello, and welcome to the Coach's Corner. We are live. Look at these four wonderful beaming faces here in the morning and the evening on the other side of the coast there. I just want to say hello and welcome to the Coach's Corner, and it's brought to you today by the Endurance Lab, where the coaches from the lab recap the week and answer your questions from the forum. My name's Jason Flores, one of the Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by coaches Taya Friestead, that'd be that way, Mitch Dingerman next to me here, and Andrea Cullen right above me here in the screen as you guys are watching it. I'm gonna check the stream, make sure everything's working. It's looking good. How is everybody doing this morning?
Wonderful, bright and early.
Good.
I'm doing very well.
Yes, excellent. We've got a great show for everybody. We are trying a couple new things, so bear with us. You've got my audio coming through here. You've got the other three coaches there coming through Skype. So thank you for joining us, everybody. And let's make sure we get this all started. All right, so we are going to go straight to hot topics in the lab, and I know Andrea has been waiting all day to put her mind at ease and be able to drop some knowledge on us today. So we're going to go ahead and start with her, and she's going to kind of try to answer this question of, looking at our health and kind of taking a kind of look inside ourselves of when we need to make sure that we are servicing as far as what we need to do if things are going in the wrong direction. So Andrea, take us on a journey.
Hi, folks. So yes, I thought I'd talk today about the things that I normally see coming into the office that sort of start to tell the story that things aren't going quite so well with our health in relation to training, and what should we do, and should we rest up, etc., etc. So without getting too far in depth in each of the things, I'm going to break down the categories of what I sort of see. So firstly, respiratory tract. So that's going to be chest, throat, sinuses, etc., etc. So when we start to get a little bit run down or things aren't going quite that well, we tend to see more allergies and a worsening of asthma. Sinus infections sometimes start to create problems, head colds, sore tickly throats, constant cough that doesn't seem to go away. And if we're really unlucky, we'll start to see chest infections or pneumonia. So that's when generally viral conditions will worsen into bacterial complications. So if you're starting to notice any of these things happening or happening more than once in the season, you need to take note. The next area that we tend to see show problems would be the gastrointestinal tract, so our stomachs. These take a beating in training because when we're training, we're generally diverting blood from our digestive system to the working muscles. When we have a bit of imbalance or issues start to happen, we tend to see more IBS type symptoms. So generally that will be diarrhea or urgency, bloating, gas, wind, just not a happy tummy, looser stools, a greater difficulty managing our nutrition. So we'll tend to not be able to hold our food in, or we're having more issues with getting in what we need when we're training and racing. Reflux and indigestion, so that would be symptoms. I tend to separate symptoms into above the waist and below the waist. So reflux and indigestion would be issues with the stomach and things coming up into our neck, not digesting our food properly. We tend to see more frequent food poisoning incidents, which is where we'll have gastritis or bouts of bad diarrhea. And then also poor nutrient absorption. So things like iron and B12 deficiency may start to show up. So the gastrointestinal tract is one that is worth paying attention to because getting our fueling in is so important. The other area that we tend to hear a lot spoken about is recovery and adrenals. How do we know that our adrenals are starting to show a bit of imbalance in our hormones? Well, we're going to wake tired and we're going to go to bed wired. We have problems sleeping, insomnia. We tend to have a slump in the afternoon. And to get us through that, we're going to have cravings for sugar, caffeine, and sometimes even fats and salts. One of the really early warning signs that people aren't aware of when the adrenal balance with our hormones, so cortisol and DHEA, tends to go off is dizziness, postural hypertension. So when you're leaning over to pick something up, or when you're getting out of bed or out of a chair quickly, you tend to have that moment when you stand up and you're like, whoa, dizzy. That's an early warning sign for adrenal imbalance. We tend to see heart rate shifts. This is one that we see spoken a lot about in training, but it can go both ways. We're often aware of elevated heart rates in the morning, but some people tend to show a depressed heart rate where it's starting to actually drop down in response to training. Light sensitivity. That's probably one that people may talk to you about, Jason, where because of the adrenals and more adrenaline in our system, we may notice that like traffic lights are upsetting our eyes more, or we're getting blinded more by headlights. And that's because our pupils tend to be more flared due to the sympathomimetic amines. Have I got that right? Yeah, there's one test that sometimes I'll do where if you bring a light across their eyes, and you can correct me if people have this wrong in the world of functional medicine, but you'll tend to see the pupil do its job properly at first with diminishing down, and then it'll start flaring out and jumping all over the place. And that's from adrenaline. So that's why the lights blind us, because our pupils just aren't doing what they should be doing. If things get bad then with our adrenals, that's when we start to see chronic fatigue, allergies getting a lot worse, weird inflammation type symptoms, thyroid issues, menstrual problems. You never want to let it go that far. And then weight gain can tend to happen despite all of our efforts, and we can lose muscle. So this is why it is worth paying attention. Moods and anxiety, moods and motivation, anxiety, not feeling the love for training, being off form, our loved ones saying that we're moodier than normal, depression, low moods, not feeling yourself, feeling overwhelmed and more anxious around people, sort of wanting to hibernate from people. Appetite will go all over the shop. You can tend to be overeating or undereating, and a low motivation for self-care. So when we start to get tired and unwell, we tend to not want to take care of ourselves when that's actually the time we really need to step things up. In our musculoskeletal system, there'll be more niggles. We'll have sore muscles. This isn't a science term, but I just wrote in dead power. We haven't got it. Cramps will start to show up more often, and just feeling imbalanced. Like you might notice that your feet aren't feeling right, or that the muscles are having your body feeling a little bit off. Performance-wise, I've used the science term sucks, which it will do as we start to feel unwell. So they're just a couple of warning signs to start watching out for. I put 10 rules together about what to do. Number 1, listen to your body. Don't fight it. Work with yourself. Your intuition is your most valuable asset of all of them in knowing when you should push through or when you should stop. And it's not easy to make a call. I'm in that space at the moment, and we can constantly fight against ourselves, but your body knows. So you should listen for the long haul. Rest, sleep, and consider adding in some daily naps. The more you can let your body recover, the faster you're going to get back. So it's worth investing in your rest and your sleep. Address the training and racing load, especially high intensity and big volume sessions, in addition to their frequency. Make a short-term plan. Sometimes you might need to adjust what your goals were to reap the rewards later on. If you don't have a coach, then consider getting yourself a coach if you're not good at listening to yourself. And at the very least, speak to someone who's subjective and understands training and body physiology and health and under stress. If you're an athlete who tends to train or travel a lot, especially with work or racing commitments, then you may need to be realistic and make some changes. Explore your mindset, your expectations, and your whys, and reevaluate your goals and expectations. So if you need to make changes, do them. We don't have infinite energy, and we need to make sure we spend it wisely, especially when the body is trying to recover. Ramp up the quality of your diet. This is non-negotiable if you want to have a fast return to form. Real food, lots of vegetables, quality protein, low GI carbs, healthy fats, no processed food, no meal skipping, and no fasted sessions. The only extreme thing about your diet should be extremely healthy. And this is because your body needs nutrition to heal. So listen to what your body is saying as well regarding cravings. Sometimes when we're looking for more salt, it's because it's trying to remedy postural hypertension and dizziness. Sometimes you're looking for more sugars because you're very, very tired and your cortisol is causing you to have swings in your blood sugar levels. So the solution to that is making sure that you don't skip meals and you have some carbs in there as well as all of your protein and your veggies. If you're looking for chocolate, it could be because you're low in magnesium, or love, because there's a compound in chocolate called PEA, which makes us feel good.
Yeah.
So not food isn't always the solution. Sometimes we just need to bring more fun into our lives. Watching if you're looking for alcohol more often, because it could be that your moods are down, or drinking more coffee, it could be because you're exhausted, and the solution is not to just put more caffeine in. So the diet part is very, very important. If you're continuing to train, it's really important that you fuel your sessions and you recover from your sessions, and make that a priority so that you can continue to do your training. And that is in the context of, like we've spoken about so many times. So go back to the podcasts around what's been before your training and what's coming afterwards. If you're racing, plan. Bring your recovery with you so you don't get caught out. If you're traveling, think ahead. What's the plane flight duration? Is there going to be food there? What's the food like at the race venue? This is a weak area for many athletes, and they tend to leave it to chance. But if you're on that line of being under recovered, this could be where you catch yourself out and you end up getting sick after a race. Bring a first aid kit with you. So I was meant to be going to South Africa next week, and there's a few things I would have done. I would have taken polenta with me to cook in hot water in the kettle in the place you were staying in, so I knew I had my pre-race carbs, which suit me. I would have traveled with all of my race day fueling and fluids so that I didn't have to run around trying to find last minute what was going to suit me and what was going to be gluten-free, which I see people do. I would have bought some gluten-free bars with me for the plane. Sometimes they mess up on the gluten-free meal and I end up with nothing. 12 hours is a long time to have nothing. And usually I bring a travel kit, and that will contain some form of antibiotics, herbs, some aromatherapy for like insect bites. Maybe you can get little plasters for anti-inflammatory I can't even talk here, with NSAIDs in it. So I'll stick those on if there's been an injury. And generally, when I bring my first aid kit, I don't need any of it just because I have it. Back to training. If you're on the bike for long sessions, don't let your blood sugar levels drop. That's going to place further stress on your adrenals. Try and eat real food if you can, so that you're getting in nutrition, which is going to help with the healing process. Eat to appetite. You should come home comfortable. Put salt in your hydration. It's going to help the adrenals, especially if you're having issues with dizziness. I would say as well to start adding a little bit of salt onto your meals can be helpful. Strategies like juicing, broths, veggie smoothies, your powdered fruit, vegetable, or seaweed extracts can boost your diet somewhat. Medical foods, so I would use one quite often called Medicare Plus by Thorne Research, which has everything in there. So it's like an insurance boost to top up your diet with. But there are other brands like Metagenics, Protocol for Life Balance, Allergy Research, which are widely available on the internet. Going gluten-free can help with some people that are having problems with their immune system and digestive problems. Supporting your tummy with prebiotic and fermented foods. So if you're writing these down, just using those terms, you'll be able to Google and find loads of answers, or I can put a bit more on the forum as to the specifics. Otherwise, I'll be here all day. Herbs and spices like ginger and turmeric are going to be very helpful for boosting your return to full form. Trying to keep to what we would call an anti-inflammatory diet. So adding in some vegetarian and fish-focused meals is going to be helpful. Limiting animal product portion sizes. A focus on omega-3 rich foods, monounsaturated fats, not too many saturated fats or omega-6 fats. Try and completely avoid the processed carbs or sugar-rich foods. They're going to have a negative impact on your immune system. And this is why I said try and train with real food on the long bikes if you can. Now, racing is a different thing, but for training, try to keep the focus on real foods. If you need, you may need to get some tests done. Don't avoid them. The faster you have answers, the faster you have solutions, and the faster you're back. So general blood tests with a focus on your white blood cells, ferritin, and B12 are going to be helpful. If the gut isn't happy, get it tested with a functional medicine practitioner. If you suspect that a lot of your problems are because of posture, get a biomechanical assessment done. Look at your workstation, your posture, your bike fit, for your shoes. Try and look at everything. Sometimes the weirdest imbalances create the weirdest symptoms. Support your mind and body. You need to work with yourself. You need to rest your mind. You need to engage the healing pathways within your body. So Epsom salt baths, aromatherapy, massage, healing therapies, osteopathy, myofascial release, PEMF, fun, talking it out, a break from the norm. Just do whatever you're drawn to. Pick one or two of those or whatever comes to you and do that. Herbs. God, I'm doing a lot of talking here, guys.
Could I say something about the blood test? So, we normally, or at least a lot of people do that, right? Your annual exams, and you do a complete blood panel and all of it, and you go to your general practitioner, and they take a look through, and you say, it all looks good. But really, when you talk to somebody like Andrea about what it all means, you start to find so much more information. Yes, it's within the normal range for what traditional medicine will tell you it is, but somebody with the background that Andrea has on the nutritional side will know that there are things in that blood test that indicate important signs for you to make adjustments, so something to consider there.
Yeah, a big one they miss is ferritin, which is the storage form of our iron. So a normal limit is, I think it's 95%. So they'll take 100 people, and if you fall within 95 of those, you're considered normal. But you could be right down at the bottom. And the amount of times I've seen a ferritin of 11 walk in, and the doctors have signed it off at okay, and I'm like, wow. The optimal for an athlete should be 65 to 80. And you are going to have fatigue issues. And when ferritin is low, it's affecting oxygen carrying capacity. It's affecting thyroid, so yeah, it's worth getting someone who's a bit nerdy about understanding what they really mean for an athlete to have a look at them, or ask me. I'll know how to go with them. So I love stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely something to look into. If you notice on the live stream, we've got Ian Murray, Coach Murray here, all dressed up, looking snazzy. I know he's got to go soon. He wanted to stop by and say hello. So good morning, Ian. How are you doing?
Good morning, Jason. How's it going?
I like that he's whispering. He's in the back of the office there, trying to hide. I love it. We've missed you, Ian.
Yeah, it's been good. Training's starting to come back a little bit from Worlds. Trying not to overdo it. I got an Olympic distance race coming up, but I just tweaked the hip flexor this morning, so that's going to be interesting.
Oh no! Yeah, we are working on timing for.
Yeah, I was stupid and decided to play a little soccer.
Yeah, that's what happens when you do other sports other than the 3 that you already do, right? Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. So, a lot of us have missed Ian here with our timing and his move. So we definitely look forward to his Sufferfest coming up here in the near future. I know you got to run, but thank you for dropping in. We look forward to, and this is our new format, everybody. You get to see our wonderful faces here on the stream, and audio is actually sounding pretty good. So you can find a nice time. We'd love to see Ian. And we can promise the viewers that Ian will not be wearing as much as he normally does up here. That is not par for the course.
Looking pro.
Yeah.
So just like I do have the Zwift station set up though, so I'll be up online this weekend, provided that my leg will let me do it.
That's awesome. Mitch, what were you saying there?
Hey, Ian, I just jumped back in to say. I was just saying I jumped back here to say hello to Ian real quick, and I apologize, but I've got to jump too. I've got a home project that continues to destroy my mornings.
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
We'll see you guys.
Thanks, guys. So getting back to the conversation with blood tests and that sort of thing, it definitely is something that there is within the normal range, and then there's but we got to think of that population that number comes from, right, Andrea? That it's essentially coming from a sick population. We're trying to compare ourselves as athletes, and trying to look at numbers. We're going back to that conversation and trying to see if our numbers match to this population of sick people, essentially, right? And so what we need to think is what's optimum, like what is in our best interest to make ourselves, the most strong, the most healthy, right?
Yeah, and understanding it in the context of an athlete, because the amount of athletes, if you went in after a hard session and had your blood work done, your doctor would probably admit you to A&E with a heart
Yeah.
attack because
Yeah, I'm
they
sure.
don't understand the same muscle markers will rise if you've had a bit of muscle damage. And I've seen that lately, where someone had a hard race in heat, and it looked like the heart was the problem, but I think it was actually muscle damage from the way our body has to, when core temperature rises, we'll tend to see more muscle damage. So that was interesting. But yeah, I know we never want to know when something's going wrong, and we will avoid it. But generally, getting answers fast mean that you're back on track quicker. And if you're not feeling quite right, or any of those symptoms that I was mentioning start happening, it is worth paying attention, because you're in this for the long haul. And some people end up in an awful mess, missing months and months and months if they don't start to pay attention. There was a couple of herbs I'd written in. Do you want me to just run through the names of
Yeah,
those
I think
that
so
people
too.
might want to look out for?
Yeah, I think that'd be good, and I'm sure it sounds like this is pretty well put together. I'm sure we'll see a blog post at some point that kind of ties this in, and we could definitely put that link in the show notes. But yeah, let's run it down so people can at least have a listen to it.
Yeah, so if you were looking at supporting your immune system, or the adrenals, herbs like astragalus, reishi, shiitake, cordyceps, eleutherococcus, which is Siberian ginseng, rhodiola, schizandra, and ashwagandha all tend to be pretty good. You're looking for a pure herbal extract from a company that knows their stuff, like Gaia, or I think there's Planet Herbs. So I tend to keep herbs here, but unfortunately I can't send them to people because they think they're bombs.
Yeah.
Antiviral herbs like sambucus, which is elderberry,
Yeah.
is wonderful, and it's in season at the moment. Mother Nature's amazing. Like, she's putting them all on the trees right now for our winter. Licorice. Then we have specific herbs like echinacea, as the form of Echinacea angustifolia is brilliant for the minute we get a cough or cold. The berberines, golden seal. There's lots more, but they're sort of the ones you want to look at. But also look at the country that you come from, or the part of the world that you come from, and there will be herbs more specific to those areas, or how our ancestry, or what our ancestors have used. So I tend to use European herbs, because that's where I'm from. One area that will generally,
Oh no, I was gonna say, yeah. So for I know Thea, you're using some of these different things here in the U.S. Do you have a good source that maybe our U.S. listeners can kind of go to, or where are you getting yours, I guess?
Yeah, so I've been working with Andrea on that. She gave me a good mixture there for my purposes, and I go to iherb.com.
Okay.
Or iherbs.com. That's the
Mhm.
website, and it's fantastic. So if you spend more than, I think, $10, you get free delivery, and it's pretty quick. So
Nice. Okay. So we do definitely have a good source here in the States as well. So that's great. Yeah. I was going to reach out to Taya, and just because this is something that we see in a lot of our athletes, I feel like, and a lot of it comes in other forms. Like I wrote down a couple notes of like sickness under stress. Like when there's high levels of TSS, I feel like there's this breaking point for athletes where if they find themselves above this level of whatever 500, 700, this number of TSS, that every time they break that number, it seems to be that the body just kind of shuts down and breaks down, and it kind of gives us this upper ceiling. Have you had experience with that, Tia?
yeah, so I'm actually working with an athlete right now, and it's the first time that this athlete is looking at her numbers with the help of a coach. And what we're finding is finding really her ceiling for that TSS, and where the tipping point is. It's oftentimes found the hard way, right? Because you sort of have to do it and get over it, and have the problem to then say, oh, that was it. That was really it. And so I had an idea just by looking at history. And that's the other reason why entering your symptoms or how you feel in your Training Peaks or whatever tool that you use for training, some form of training diary, entering those notes associated with your workouts is so valuable because you can look back and look at the history and see. It's amazing. The picture comes right out of when you are feeling, unless there's other underlying things that are outside of the training area, but really you start to see a clear connection between the stress from the work that you're doing on the bike or your sport and how you're feeling.
Yeah, so a lot of time we're dealing with time crunched athletes, athletes that are looking to get the most out of the little bit of time that they have. So what happens is that people end up doing a lot more intensity than that we would like them to do, because they're trying to cram all this fitness in essentially, and can really run down this road of getting overtired and kind of really running their body down. So super important to make sure that we're looking at things like this, and if they're needing to supplement with, really it starts with kind of some of the simplest things that Andrea brought up, which is like rest and food and proper food, because a lot of times people are just not getting the proper food in, and I think that's a really good key.
And we talk about so much in terms of we have to train hard to take it to the next level, to progress, to adapt, etc. You have to push the boundaries. So I think that sometimes gets to the extreme and gets a little bit lost in translation when people go out and say, no, I should be working hard. I'm feeling tired, but I should just push through it. There's a balance there for sure.
Yeah, and what I find often is, we're looking at, anywhere from 2 to 3 kind of maximum for those athletes who are more veteran as far as getting those intensity sessions in. We're talking about sessions at threshold or above threshold, and the rest of the workouts being kind of under threshold. And we'll kind of bring that in a little bit of another part of our conversation today, and knowing kind of where those zones are and what you're using. And if you're making sure that you are, servicing yourself with the right amount of exposure to those high intensities, then in fact when you can actually fill the rest of the week with things like tempo or things below that will allow you to kind of still grow, and that's what I'm finding in some of the I guess more recent research, or just what I'm coming across, is that's what people are feeling, that even the most veteran athletes or the highest level athletes, what they're doing is they're still doing those 2 or 3 high intensity, but everything else is filled kind of on that other end with kind of the tempo / zone 2 work, and really filling. And that's where the TSS and work's coming from. The problem comes when people are trying to fill it in with 4, 5 intense workouts, races. This, Zwifters are really bad at this, where you're racing 2 times a week, you've got 3 workouts, that's 5 intense sessions. And this is where you're going to come into problems, where you're getting infections, you're having troubles with your adrenals, you're not fueling properly, and it's not a good road to go down.
And you have, your intensity days, high intensity days should be really hard, and your easy days should be very easy. Yeah. So what your example there on the Zwifter side, that people would like to go in and do a little race here, a little right there, you're going somewhat hard all the time. Right. Yeah. And that doesn't work for training purposes. What also doesn't work for training purposes is going hard all the time. So doing 5 intensities in a week is not going to make you better or give you more benefit than you would if you did less than that. So
yeah, excellent. Andrea, was there anything else there for our topic?
I suppose, 2 things. One that's jumping out, just following on, like, you really have to manage as coaches people's minds, don't you? And getting them to kind of stop their training when they stop their training. Otherwise, they're going to burn themselves out faster. But I suppose that's a lesson that gets learned, and sometimes the train crashes. And then valuable lessons are learned. The big one, the last one, number 10, was just about supporting your gut health. It's amazing how having a healthy gut keeps the rest of the body healthy. So things like probiotics, glutamine, vitamins A and D. There's a marker for immune system that tends to drop in athletes called IgA, secretory IgA, and the probiotics, things like Saccharomyces boulardii, can be really helpful. And then you want to always be on top of your gut health. For some reason, everything falls apart from there. So if you've traveled, done a race, got food poisoning, come back, and 2 months later, you've something like an annoying IBS type thing going on, get it looked at. You might have picked up a bug, and it's worth addressing. I've just seen that a lot of times, and it can break athletes.
Oh yeah.
And international travel is a big thing for a lot of athletes. So nearly traveling with your probiotics can be really helpful just to prevent things happening. So yeah, that's my list.
No, definitely, like I said, a great list. Would love to see that all come together for our readers. We definitely get you guys a link here in the show notes as it does come out. But yeah, definitely look at that list. Kind of look into yourself again and making sure you're being honest. If you're using a coach, making sure you're being honest with them. I wonder if Taya has come across where we may have, like, let's say a Training Peaks account where our workouts are being loaded, but magically you see on one of our athletes' Strava account that they actually went out and did more work. And you're like, hey, what happened? I thought we were done for the week. And you're like, it was just a coffee ride. Yeah. It was just a da-da-da-da. And we're like, hey guys, you gotta need to shut it down.
My favorite is the 4-hour coffie ride.
Oh yeah, that's not a
but
coffee.
It was really low intensity, but it was 4 hours.
Yeah, 4 hours in the middle of zone 3, right by your threshold, right?
It was just a few hills here and there.
Yes, yeah. 7,000 feet of climbing. That's all. Yeah, the woes of a coach and what we deal with, but it's what makes it fun. We deal with personalities all day, and so I think it's what drives what we do. So, all right, we're going to shift gears here a little bit. We were chatting a little bit about Zwifters and kind of using indoor and outdoor training. And we've come across this a couple different times, and I was hoping to kind of address it and get a couple of the coaches' feedback. And essentially, it's using our power source. And if, in fact, we're using different power sources indoors and outdoors, and how we can kind of deal with that. It's kind of come up a couple different times. But I'll first reach out to Andrea and Taya and ask them about their setups and what they do indoors and outdoors as far as their power meters. So, Andrea, we can start with you.
Well, Santa Claus was really good to me at Christmas. So now I have the power tap pedals, and I'll switch those between whether I'm inside or outside, so I have consistency. Now, some of the Zwift long rides are just that little bit too hard for me to do 3 hours in endurance zone. And the Zwift power is a little bit less. So sometimes I might just drop to that power reading just to get proper training done. Like, it's not a race and I'm not cheating or anything. It's just making sure I can do the long ride in the right zone, because Garen does a really good long one and I'll join him for that. But usually I'll stick with the same power source inside and outside to have consistency.
So there's an interesting thing that that the two of you could actually do if we could work on it at a different time. But if you guys set your weights appropriately to your FTPs, you could actually ride together, and you wouldn't get behind her or get you could. Yes. So we've been doing that before there was group workouts. This is how we trained to get everybody together. We would actually pick an FTP. You remember what it was around, Tia? 3.2 or 3.0? And we set everybody's weight according to that. I can send you, we have a calculator. And it would be nice because then everyone would, for the most part, be very, very close for the intervals. Even high intense intervals, people would be pretty close with their power to weight ratios with weights per kilogram.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
So with the power meter pedals that she has, for everybody who doesn't know the different meters, you can have them on your pedals, you can have them in your crank, and then you could have them in your hub. So hers are on her pedals, so she's able to take those off and put them on her outdoor bike and her indoor bike. There's not much calibration that's needed in between the change there, Andrea, between the two?
They seem to be okay. Maybe I should be on it a little bit more.
No, not at all. From my experience with my athletes that have P1, they're pretty easy. You spin them on, make sure they're tight. You give it a spin, you have them zeroed out, and you're good to go. So that's definitely the best case scenario. Obviously, she also has a power. What trainer do you use to get Zwift power?
Essentially, the Vortex, the Genius.
Yeah,
and that is a pain in the neck sometimes. it just starts to forget how to work, and it will spin. Yeah. So it seems, and then you spend forever recalibrating, realigning, and then eventually it decides, oh, I'm going to work again. Don't know if that comes up for anybody else.
It probably does. Some of the tax systems can definitely give us issues, I guess, as coaches as well. It's a wheel-on trainer, if I remember right. Is that correct? Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah. So the whole bike is on.
Exactly. So yeah, that can definitely be a system. And do you know, is there a difference between your pedals and your trainer? Like it sounds like there's 50
and
watts.
That surprised me. It's almost 20.
20, so about 20 watts, and that's what you'll find. There's a good amount of percentage. There's some that are closer than others, but there is that difference, and I'll speak to how we can take care of that difference. But let's switch over to Taya. She can tell us about the several trainers that she has and the several bikes and power meters that she's tested. About go ahead.
Or the computers, or the cameras, or the microphones. I'll sell everything when I need to retire. So that's my college fund right there for the kids. But I have I have a Tex Neo, and I have a Quark power meter. So that's a crank power meter, and I have tested both, and they're within, I don't know, 2 watts difference. It's really very, very close. So I know that whatever I'm doing outside is pretty much the same that I'm doing inside. And then calibrating the Quark is fairly easy. You just rotate the cranks backwards. The other way to calibrate is with your computer. So for example, a Wahoo Element or a Garmin, you just select the sensor and calibrate. The recommendation is that you calibrate before every single ride for your outdoor power meter. And reason being, even changes in temperature can alter the calibration of your power meter on your bike.
So that's the main thing for these power meters, and what makes the change in how they measure is the temperature, altitude, and that sort of thing. So for all my for my athletes, I always have them do that. A lot of times in our like pain caves or where we're at, the settings are very similar, but really just best have it zero out before every ride. That way you're not having any issues. So Taya's in a good situation where the Quarks, and they're known for that, to be very close to a lot of the other power meters that are out there. The Tax Neo is also a very good one as well. So having those match up is good. So the difference being very, very little. For myself, I use a Cyclops Hammer indoors, and then I use a 4i crank-based power meter outdoors. But I actually switch the crank back and forth to my 2 bikes. So I have Ultegra on both my bikes. So the crank goes from my outdoor bike to my indoor bike. So it's the same left crank on both bikes. Again, if you notice, what's the same for all of us is that we use a power meter that's either exactly as we are in both situations, or we know the difference. But really, ideal is the same. So the question is what do we do if there's a difference like 20 watts, like Andrea had before? So that would put her zones completely in a different place. So I'll reach out to the coaches on kind of what you've done, Andrea, and what Taya had recommended to athletes that have this issue. But really, I think the idea about it is you need to kind of really set 2 essentially zones or 2 places that you work out. If let's say they were 50 watts apart, you would really want to have your outdoor numbers that you use, and you hit those zones, and then your indoor numbers. It's tedious, but unfortunately that's going to be the best way to go if you are using 2 sources, because unless they're the same and they're coming from the same place, like how Andrea has, you have no reliability. You can't use your indoor number outdoors. You can't use your outdoor number inside, because you're going to be in completely the wrong zone. Being off by even the 15 or 20 watts can easily, if you're on the edge of a zone, can put you into a different place where you may not be looking for, and that might not be the goal of the workout. So, oh, Ted, do you have something there?
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I think that's the best approach to do it, knowing the difference and adjusting as you go do workouts outdoors, but also as you pace yourself doing an event or a race, etc., and you're looking at your numbers, you know where you are. Mm-hmm. It can get tricky though, but you could have, yeah. How do you, I guess people will be also thinking to themselves, but really, which one is the correct one, right?
Yeah. So really, that comes to the question of not so much correctness, but you want a place to go back to be able to compare to see change over time. And this is one thing I tell patients. We do a lot of technology at our offices. We take images of retinas and optic nerves and maculas. These are all parts of the eye. And I tell patients that this is what we want to see is change over time. So with your power meters, you want to use the same power meter as much as you can, and you want to see that number change over time. So really, if my FTP is whatever 250, and Coach Mitch is 250, going up to 275 doesn't mean I'm going to beat somebody with an FTP of a lower or higher FTP. It really is just a meter for yourself. And a lot of times people want to get into the fight of like, my bar is bigger, my FTP is bigger. But in fact, you need to have the FTP. And again, what we talk about in the Endurance Lab, you need to have the skills that will get you to where you need to be. And I'm sure, Taylor's been doing a lot of racing this season. I'm sure there is riders that have higher FTPs and lower FTPs. And, nobody has FTPs, pasted on their backs at the race, and nobody checks the FTPs at the end of the race. Just like, at the end of the race, nobody's checking heart rates to see who had the lowest heart rate during the race,
Right.
And so that's the other
you don't get a medal for that.
Yeah, there's no
you're
medal
not in a podium for that. Yeah.
Exactly. So with that conversation, then just be honest to yourself and know that that's a number that you have. You put your pin down, whatever your number is, and you want to improve on that, and keep using the same meter. And as we do things like gaming, you could essentially, quote unquote, game the game. And really, it's not a place you want to get yourself into. You kind of throw a lot of other things that you don't want to kind of deal with, and then you don't ever know where you're at because you're not using the same thing, and that's why it's so important. So I think that definitely answers that question. You guys have anything to add as far as use of indoor and outdoor? I know Andrea has some good experience with this, and kind of how did you deal with it before you had your Christmas gift there, like in the years past, like.
Well, I suppose I was consistent on the FTP that I thought I was, and off the power readings that I was. But when I got the pedals, I had to do my FTP again and start all over. And the only time I ever switch back to Zwift Power is those rides that would have me way into tempo for 3 hours, which is nuts. So I'll just go back to Zwift Power, and it puts me in my aerobic zone.
Yeah, excellent.
So that's the only time I've ever really gone back onto the Zwift Power. But I suppose our numbers could be completely wrong, and so long as we're training in the right zones and consistently and getting better,
that's important.
This is where I suppose we can't all be comparing our numbers against one another. It's just about getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to shift gears here, and Taya's got her topic, failure or is it, and kind of her little section here. So I'll give her the floor here, and we'll kind of chat about a couple different things. So take it away, Taya.
So failure, because we're in the middle of Zwift Academy. We have our Academy Booster Lab that we're helping athletes through that. I'm leading rides for Zwift Academy. We also have just our usual discussions about hitting numbers and workouts and events and etc. So, and even Andrea had a great blog post that she shared in the forum about failure as well. So the question really is failure. So the topic is failure, but is it really failure, right? So let's do some examples here. In the context of a workout, not achieving a power target or not finishing all the intervals or not finishing one of the blocks, is that failing? Well, according to Zwift, when you have those numbers on your screen on the menu, yes, that's failure because it's like failed, big and red for you there on the screen. So that is something I cannot tell you how much I've read and how disheartening that is to people. And it would be helpful for athletes to understand that it is a computer software. It cannot possibly measure the physiological benefit you're getting from the workout. It cannot possibly measure whether you are within that zone that is providing the stimulus that you need to progress, because it is limited. It is a linear thing. It's just there. So keep in mind that you do your workouts, even if you're within a couple of watts of your target number, you're still getting the benefit and you're still working what you're supposed to be working. And therefore, that's not failing. But if it is failing, and let's say that, yeah, you're completely out and you're so away from that number that in your mind, yeah, that's a failure. But again, how do you know your limits if you don't work yourself to a point where you can't go any harder? You'll never know your limits. That's number one. Number two, you might not be having a good day, and that's okay. You could have an off day. And the one off day, by the way, can just be that. You don't even have to read too much into it. You were doing great yesterday. You have a great workout the next day. You just have that one day that you're off. You know what? Something was off that day. You might don't need to dive in and go into deep thoughts. But then if you have more than one and you're not feeling great, then we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning here of the podcast, when Andrea was explaining all of the things that could be happening that you should pay attention to. So it isn't a failure. It is a process, and it is part of it, really. So that's in the context of a workout, for example. Well, how about a race? A race, again, it depends on your goals. Are you new to racing? Is this the first year you're racing? Or have you been racing for a while and really want to finish and get a medal at the end or a podium? So, thinking about that, a lot of things can be your goals during a race. And so, your goal might be simply not getting dropped, or if you get dropped, you don't get lapped, or you want to try a breakaway with the front group, etc. None of that happens, and you did something that didn't provide that outcome that you wanted, that you wished for. It's not a failure either, because it only is failure in my mind, I believe, if you gave up in your mind. I'm not even talking about getting off the bike and walking away like I rage quit the race. It's really in your mind. If in your mind you tell yourself, you know what, I'm not going to go after this, or that's all right, I'll just spin around and that's okay. That is sort of quitting, and that's, that can be failing. But if you set yourself up to go out there and give your best, there are so many things that could happen that are completely out of your control. So it didn't have the outcome that you wanted to. That's okay. You learned something. I am sure you learned something in the process. So one thing that my coach said once, which I think is a great mindset to have in a race, is instead of thinking about what you're going to get from the race, think about what you're going to give to the race. What are you giving? Right. So are you going there and giving your best? Are you going there and really trying something that you wanted to try and achieve, etc.? So those things to keep in mind. We are in this. Yes, we learn so much about ourselves when we're in sport. If you're not doing this professionally, it shouldn't be an energy drainer for you. It really shouldn't. It should be something that is enjoyable. It's fun. Of course, you get you get nervous before an event. You might be getting anxious, etc. But really, have an open mind and don't lose sight of the process, because it is what keeps us going. It is the day-to-day process. Are you enjoying the workouts that you do? Are you enjoying how you have it planned out? Are you enjoying the group rides that you have, etc.? So make it fun. Don't lose sight of the process. And again, you're always giving something, giving your best. You're learning from it. You're progressing. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, yeah, you got a podium that might look good on social media for 15 minutes, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, it's you with yourself.
Yeah, I think this speaks a lot to we've talked a couple different times about people's why and kind of why they do things. We've also chatted a little bit about having the proper goals, or kind of establishing what your goals are. For example, for a race or a group ride, or a ride for that day, or even a workout. Like, are you trying to make sure that you stay right on, within the power? Are you trying to do these different things? And that's where kind of we come in as far as coaches, to kind of prompt those questions to you as riders, to kind of extract that out of you, because a lot of times people need to verbalize it. What happens often is that people have goals, and then they have what we call as coaches secret goals, or goals that aren't verbalized to us or to themselves until they're realized, 5 laps to go in a crit, or on the final climb, or in the final bits of a group ride, where all of a sudden you have this goal that you come up with in your head, that you want to be at the front of the group, chasing the break, or trying to finish, trying to finish at the front of the pack. So being honest with yourself will help you at the end of a race, or at the end of a ride, or even end of a workout, that you've reached your goals. Oftentimes in the workout situation, really you can get yourself kind of through a workout with the tools like ERG and smart, and the use of our smart trainers and that sort of thing. But if you listen to at all of our podcast, and us as coaches, a lot of our riders and we are advocates of learning to use the power meters, our power meters, and our own legs to kind of find yourself and have that feeling in your legs to be able to hold that power. And that's where a lot of times, especially early on, if you remember, Tia, like as we were switching a lot of our riders over, they felt like they were failing because they weren't reaching the average powers. But in fact, if we would go through and dig through the files, like the Training Peak files, and we highlight that section, they were right on it. The average power is right where it needed to be. And yeah, it looks like a jagged line and it's not pretty and exactly straight, but you know what? Power isn't straight because nobody's putting exactly 250 watts exactly every time the crank comes over.
We're not robots, right?
Yeah.
We're not robots.
Yeah, emulators, I guess we'd call it in the game, right? We're not emulators of power. So, so I think it's important in the workout setting that you use those. And we've gone as far as having people use other tools like their Garmin to get their average watts during an interval and hitting the lap button. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this to get an idea of if you're hitting those targets and then be able to set those goals. Other platforms that we have our workouts on, for example, like Trainer Road, they will actually give you a percent of, and they'll give you an average for the interval as well as a percent of how close you were to what the target was. So I feel some of those markers may be a little bit better, and they may be on par with that workout side of things. So that could be useful for those that are looking for that sort of thing. But Trainer Road's been doing that workout portion of it for a long time, so they really have it dialed in. Andrea, anything about kind of what we're talking about here?
No, they were very wise words. Thank you, Thea. I felt like you were talking to me there for a while. I think it's really hard to make a call sometimes on doing the right thing and making the right choice. And just personally, when there's so much more to our lives than just that podium or just that race, it's making the right decision. And I suppose, speaking for myself personally, I've just run out of time to get my health back on track for this race. And I could push that race or be there for me and be there for my clients and sort my health out. And I think for any people that watch numbers, the Training Peaks, when you watch your phone collapse its numbers, it's not a measure of your worth or where you are. Sometimes Training Peaks can't tell you actually how you feel. And I think watching the numbers can be very hard for some people. So learning, like you're always teaching people as coaches, and I know because I hear you say it so many times, listening to your body is so important, and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So the one last thing on the failure thing is, I challenge you to go back and think back of the events that you participated in, the rides that you've been on, anything, the ones that made you feel awesome. What was it about it? And I guarantee you, it wasn't the outcome. That can be part of it, but really, chances are was something. It's how it made you feel. It's the experience of it. It's really what was happening at that point. So
definitely, and they're important goals as well. I'm too nervous with racing, so I'll always set feeling goals for races. I feel great. Wow, my legs don't hurt. Blah blah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Andrea brought up a good point. When we see riders, we teach them, or they kind of come on a journey with us and learn kind of their metrics, like through Training Peaks and their stress scores, CTL, ATL, all these things, and they start to learn what those things are. They hold themselves to this number that I want to hold this number, whatever it is, 60 all year, all the time, over this number, when in fact, for us as coaches, we want that number to actually be able to come down and then come back up and come down and come back up. Because when you come back to a number, let's say it is 60, this is the number that we're working with, you're at 60 and you bring that down and you rest and you actually come back to that 60. It's actually not the same 60, everybody. You are actually a stronger version of that 60 because you've rested, you've absorbed that fitness. You are stronger at that next time you hit that number. So let's say 60, that 60 number of CTL is the number that you can reach just because of time, family, and that sort of thing. Then we could just bring you back to that number every single time stronger. So there's riders that I have that can easily do, race on 40 and 50, and they're Cat 3 racers because they've got families. But every time they come to that 50, they know that when they come to that 50, they're stronger and they have what they need to do what they want in the races, then that's what matters. And the second thing, CTL, I'll come back to it. I just had it when I was talking, but yeah. So just looking at those numbers and making sure that you're not holding yourself to kind of like, I have to be at this number or better. So
yeah, it's fascinating, those numbers. Like I was 95 when I stopped training 3 weeks ago and felt terrible. And I'm dropped down to about 70 now, but my health's starting to bounce back and I'm starting to feel good. And I could probably still do the session that I couldn't do at 95. You know, that we have to put how we feel into that number. It doesn't tell us how good or useless we are.
That's right. That's right. And I'll give an example from my own. I did my season of races this year with a CTL of about 75. 70, 75. So, you know, it's really, there's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that number is very personal to each rider. Oh, and now I remember what I want to talk about. So going back to that number. So that number, what Andre had mentioned, it doesn't tell you, it only tells you the stress that's coming from the bike. So there's not a TSS or CTL for family or work or relationships. There's
Good job.
Yeah, right. So like if you could enter all of those, I guess you know what? What could be your CTL, Andrea, and you've been looking into this. It could be HRV, right? That's the next thing, and I guess maybe that could maybe bring that all in and give us an idea of kind of how the rest of the life is stressing the body with our resting heart rate and kind of like the gaps between the beats, and HRV could be the next thing, you know.
So HRV translation for people, heart rate variability.
Yeah. So essentially that's looking at how kind of your heart's beating, or well, actually maybe Andre, you might have a little bit more insight. Maybe you can share a little bit with HRV, a quick tidbit. Or eyes go. Well, it's essentially measuring. You got it? Go ahead.
Well, it's the difference between beats. So just say you have 60 beats per minute. We think our beats are 1 per second, but we have some that are slightly more and some that are slightly less, and variability is actually a sign of health. We have done some tracking in our house with HRV. I haven't done it for myself, but we found no correlations at all with anything to do with life stress or training stress. We're not sure if the phone wasn't reading it right. We were in touch with the company, and now we're starting to get an idea of the core sense, the little finger, when you use straight on your finger. So we'll report back on that. But I do think if you can get really good at listening to your body and being honest with yourself, no technology beats that. And I know that fries a lot of us to listen to ourselves. But I think it is your most accurate gauge on actually, how am I feeling? Should I do this session? I think athletes veer on the side of that one session too much, and then they're like, okay, I really was not feeling great. But it's better than the general public, which will veer on the side of 10 sessions under what they need to be doing. So it's a learning skill. I think crashing and burning now and again, getting it wrong, failing, it's where we learn so much to be stronger.
Totally. All right, we are going to jump to our last section of the lab. We are definitely having a great conversation here, but I want to make sure we cover all our topics today. We're looking at what's going on in this week for the riders in the lab. I'm going to send it over to Taya for our 4 skills, and then I can cover our strength stuff. So Taya, what were the riders dealing with that are doing the execution lab this week?
It is a hard week in terms of tough workouts. We had the Peaks 4 workout, which was one that everybody enjoyed, which was it's a great skill to have on that workout. I led that one in the Zwift workout module. It's really learning to go from the tempo range all the way up to VO2 to sprint, and training your legs to be able to do that big surge at the end when you already have a significant build up on your legs. So we started with Peaks 3. Peaks 4 was this week, and it's a progression, as you can tell. So then the tempo ramps was again, the medium range of your zones there as a midweek rest, but still progressing in your training. And then the VO2, the 111 or 110-11, it was one on, one off, but really the off this time was at tempo. So you had to go to VO2, recover at tempo, and then VO2 again, and then recover a tempo, which it's hard to do. But again, working that system so you can be able to absorb all the surges and be able to surge on demand when you're in those races and tough rides out there. The speed builder, which has really a combination of a lot of things and simulate a fast group ride and work on different power zones and combining them, and really has, if you look closely at that workout, that can translate straight into something you would do outdoors. So as you do these workouts, I recommend that keep an eye on those numbers when you're doing them, because when you are out there, it's something that you learn from the workouts that you can do out on a ride or out on a race, those zones combined. So you look at, oh, I went from this number to that number, then back to this number, so I know I can do it, and you can replicate that outside.
Right, and being able to use that knowledge to be able to use when you're in the group ride, when you're in the race setting, and to be able to do that. I guess just one quick highlight. I actually will leave it. It's the 1 minute on, 1 minute off. Super classic. Some groups may call it like shuttling or kind of lactate threshold workouts. Essentially, what you're trying to do is get right up to that VO2 max for a short minute at a time, recover right below it, and come right back up. And essentially, you may not get to 10. The prescription that we've had before has gone up to 20 for some riders. Really depends on the length of their race. But this is kind of just a taste of what kind of work you need to get done to be able to go above, essentially all out for a minute, come back down, all out for a minute. And so your numbers may drop over time. And there may be a time where you're like, I cannot produce the kind of power. And what you want to do is be able to try to come back and training that number, doing that workout, be able to do it again. And having them close together is important. The longer the rest, then you'll be able to come back. But how often do you have a minute of recovery at 100 watts in a race? So really, it's following those surges, but really great workouts. As far as the strength side, it hasn't changed. We're doing the 17-minute strength for cyclists after. Definitely check out those YouTube videos. Taya's got some great views on that. And also the 15-minute workout, kind of just for your everyday core. Keep that core strong. If you're getting any weird niggles on the bike, off the bike, getting through these two workouts can definitely help, especially coming straight off the bike for the stretching cyclist one, and then the 15-minute workout on the days in between. Taya, do we have a couple minutes here? Do we think we have time for our lab ride of the week, or do we want to give it like it's good time for, and we can push it to next? What do you think?
I think we can do it pretty quickly here.
Okay, let's do it.
Our lab rat of the week is Covey. She had a great event the last weekend, the Vermont Challenge, and there are different stages. She participated in the last 2 days, and those are the most challenging because there's a lot of climbing involved in that. And she said it was the toughest ride she's ever done in her life, and she's been doing the programs in the lab for a couple of months now. And she went for the toughest challenge. I think there are different routes that even within those 2 days of challenge, you can choose different routes or different ways. And she said, you know what, I'm going to do the toughest one. And she did. And she was very successful at it. She had the mental, let's say, skill to not only go through it, but also the confidence that her training gave her to say, you know what, I can do this and I'm going to do it. And this to give you an idea, the average grade was about 10% of this climb, and it was pretty tough in the last 5.3 miles because it was 3,200 feet of climbing in 5 miles. That's to the top of Mount Equinox. That's and so she not only was able to complete the challenge, she finished in a great position as well. So big shout out to her. She used her skills from the lab. She used the standing. She said at the end, there was nothing she could do but stand on a bike and do it out of the saddle. So great job.
Yeah, without trying, without training that's not something that you'd be able to go to and think that, most of riders you'll find get up and just completely cramp up. But if you've done it before, I mean, it's something you just pull from your training.
Yeah, I mean, she has the last mile here at 16% grade, relentless 16%.
That's nuts. That's nuts. All right. So we had a great talk today. We've gone all the way from when your health starts to crash and kind of the different things and some top 10 things that you can keep in mind to keep yourself healthy. Went from power meter setups indoors and outdoors and that sort of thing, and how to kind of manage the differences between and kind of best practices, and kind of talking about failures or just kind of setting those goals, and if in fact you are failing, or knowing when things are going the wrong way. And really just kind of summing all that up here with the coaches, just trying to reach out to all of you as writers and listeners. If you're looking to kind of set goals, making sure that you're honest to yourself, you're honest to your body, and you're doing the things that will make yourself achieve those goals. So from the coaches today, I want to say thanks for their time. Thanks to everyone listening in. Was there anything else, Andrea, Tia, comments before we go?
All good.
Just smiling.
Keep up the great work.
I love it. I love the wallpaper in Andrea's kitchen. Kitchen, is it? Yes. So
this is my office.
It's your office.
At the moment.
That's fun.
Yeah.
We'll have to each of us take each other around as we do this more. For the people that are listening, there's also a video of all of this, and so this is our format. To bring our lovely faces to you guys, hopefully like writers like Covey or maybe something like that, we could bring other people in to chat with us as well. So that's something for the future. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today here in the Coach's Corner. But if it's your first time listening and like to hear more content from the Endurance Lab, head over to your favorite podcast app and search the Endurance Lab, or head over to YouTube and search the same and click subscribe. For more information on when the next lab is, head over to endurancelab.fit to learn where you can join us to train smart, learn more, and get results. We'll see everybody next week. Bye-bye.